Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's transit report on Monday, August 19th, 2024. I have the chart for today at noon, or actually at 12:25 p.m. today. This is the exact full moon that we'll be having in Aquarius just in a couple of hours from now. Before we jump into the Monday chart, though, and the full moon, I do want to back up just for a few moments back 2 weeks ago to the new moon in Leo. I always like to remind ourselves where we started this lunar cycle that we are now halfway through, and just to take a look back at where the sun and the earth and the moon were, and what were some of the symbolisms that we can find in this chart that we may be experiencing as we approach this incredibly dynamic full moon today. So the new moon, yes, was in Leo. This was our seventh new moon of the Rave year. It was a bit unique from my perspective because all of the previous six new moons this year were all heavily emphasizing individual gates and channels. Um, Individual channels in all but two of those, and the two that didn't have an individual channel, the moon herself was in an individual gate. So we have been having this continuous drumbeat, this ongoing rhythm of our individual nature and our body graphs being stimulated. But as we approached, as we had the Leo new moon here, we had the moon and the sun in gate 33, the gate of privacy and retreat. And it's part of our abstract or sensing circuitry, very associated with our solar plexus and our experiential nature of our lives, our relationships, and the experiences we go through. And so, one element to the new moon was it was very associated with timing. Gate 33 is again, being very closely connected to our personal authority and our own body graph, but speaks to this taking time to retreat and observe, to integrate and to recognize what's next. Where are we in the experience, whichever area of our life that we're contemplating right now, and what's going to happen next? What have we learned so far that is ready to be expressed as part of the gate 33? And it's in Leo, fixed fire, the sign of the lion. Always makes me think of, what is your roar? How do you where are you a lion in life with confidence and inner creativity? So very much a theme of this lunar cycle is contemplating, where do I feel confident? Where do I feel insecure? Where do I still have possible wounds or trials and tribulations from the past that may still be holding me back? And so that was part of the course we've been on. And a couple other important elements that happened at the new moon. Number one was that Jupiter in Gemini in gate 35 was in a square and a half to Pluto in gate 60. And so we were feeling this energy of Pluto being deeply connected to this lunar cycle in that gate 60, the gate of limitations, part of our mutative process in life, overcoming limitations, accepting them, surrendering to them, and hopefully alchemizing them so that these limitations can be turned into strengths and gifts through experience that we can offer to the world. And so that was part of this. What kind of progress, this Jupiter in gate 35, what kind of progress may we be experiencing in overcoming these limitations? And also want to point out that Venus was in Leo as well at 29 degrees, but she was forming a quincunx with Neptune in 29 degrees Pisces. So Venus was in gate 29, and that's important because when I get into the chart today, we've got the sun in gate 29. So Venus was giving us a little precursor, a bit of a preview of what was going to be happening as we go through this full moon we're having today. But here it was in a quincunx to Neptune in gate 25, but pulling in Neptune, pulling in this gate of the spirit of our higher self. And even though it's a quincunx, which can be a little confusing and unclear, I think it just speaks to there was something to discover here. What might we find during this emotional lunar cycle? Also, Mercury went retrograde right after this new moon. So that's been a big backdrop to where we are now. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But just really wanted to bring in for the new moon as well to point our attention to Pluto in the gate 60, which is doing its retrograde. It's about to go back into Capricorn again, but Pluto's doing this retrograde dance while it takes a couple years to change signs, as well as Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces, also in retrograde. So not going to get into Aries for a while still, but at the end of the sign, working its motion eventually into Aries. And as well, the third outer planet, Uranus, at almost 27 degrees Taurus, is doing the same thing, working up the end of his movement through Taurus. And so all three outer planets are in this end of a sign, trying to move into the next sign. And so I think that's what's giving our whole planet this feeling that things have to change. But when are they going to change? How are they going to change? Like how, we're just in this time with a lack of clarity right now. And I think that's part of the larger, bigger picture outer planets, which hold structure. They move so slowly, so they really hold their space in the sky, and they provide a scaffolding that all of the other faster moving planets, as they ping that scaffolding, create these experiences. But I think it's important to note that it's going to take a few years to get out of this situation with these outer planets. And so I just encourage us to take that deep breath and accept and be aware that we're part of a larger process here. So even though I'm going to go into the exact day-to-day aspects as the chart is sharing them with us, to remember that we're part of a larger cycle, multiple cycles. In fact, we're also going to talk about Jupiter squaring Saturn today at the time of this full moon. Let me go ahead and move into the full moon chart. Just wanted to bring some of those elements forward into today's chart. So now I've pulled up 12:25 Mountain Time PM. This is the exact moment of the full moon in Aquarius. But I was mentioning that we are also another larger cycle we're a part of is that today, shortly after the new moon at 12:25, or the full moon at 12:25, we're going to have Jupiter forming its first exact square to Saturn at about 3 p.m. today. And when we look at the Saturn-Jupiter cycle, and when I say cycle, we're thinking back to when they were conjunct. They were conjunct in December of 2020, and into 2021. So if we think back, that was the beginning of the COVID and the quarantine and the lockdown and this dynamic between Saturn, which is restriction and boundary and limitation, and Jupiter, which is expansive and growth and opportunity. They have a 20-year cycle, and we're at the quarter phase of that. And so it's a very dynamic time between this tug of war, this square frictional energy between being held back, this sort of, are we going backwards? Are we, I'm thinking of conservatism. We want to hold on to the past, but yet Jupiter looking to the future and the vision and the higher ideals that, he rules Sagittarius. So it's where is the future going? We're in this very dynamic square energy with them. And so I just point those out again, just to help us recognize that we're in a big world process right here as we go through this evolutionary mutation in the human species leading into 2027. And so all of that is part of the backdrop. But let's bring it down into today's chart to see what we can glean from this incredibly powerful full moon today. So for one, as many of you may have heard already, this is what we call a blue moon. And we all can remember that phrase, something only happens once in a blue moon. It means it's very rare. It's just not common. Well, if you look up the definition to a blue moon, there's actually two of them. One definition of a blue moon is whenever we have a full moon or two full moons inside of one calendar month. But over the course of history, there was a little disagreement on the definition, and there's also another one which is called a seasonal blue moon. Typically, we have 3 full moons in any season, spring, summer, fall, winter. We get 3 lunar cycles, but we have 4 this time. And so the third full moon, which is today, is also called a seasonal blue moon. Again, pretty rare, only happens every couple of years or so. But it is also what we call a supermoon, which is an astronomical term, which means that when the elliptic of the moon around the Earth is close to the Earth's elliptic around the sun, it's very close to the Earth. So the moon right now is at her closest point to the Earth. So she will appear extra big, almost 30% larger. So we actually have what we call a super full blue moon. Now that's very rare. On average, it takes anywhere between 10 to 20 years to have this event take place. So that alone is bringing extra emotional energy, extra significance. It's kind of a full moon on steroids in that way. So if anyone's feeling this extra emotional quality, that would be quite expected. We know that we want to go back to our regulation of our body if we're feeling that, whenever we're a little out in front of ourselves or feeling internal anxiety or just overwhelm, to use our tools, right? And Brandy Jordan has a beautiful somatic toolbox at our webpage, emergebydesign.net. And there's lots of things we can use to come back into our body, to ground ourselves right now. And I think that's really, really supportive this entire week. When I look at this week, as I'm about to get into more details of it, it's incredibly dynamic. I mean, even just a casual view at that astrological chart, you can see a lot of very thick red lines that we're going to talk about right now. But it's part of this incredibly energetic, dynamic, super blue full moon that we're going to be experiencing certainly for the rest of this week. So even though it's exact today, much of these aspects, I just also want to remind everyone that this is going to take all week, right? These are a lot of heavy duty energies in play. So why do I say that? Well, one is that at the time of the full moon, the sun is now in gate 29. It's called the gate of saying yes. In the original I Ching, it's called the gate of the abysmal. It's located in the sacral center, part of the channel of discovery, very associated with the solar plexus. It's the life force energy, ability to commit, to say yes to a new cycle of discovery. It speaks very much to our life force energy, to our ability to commit and to persist. Perseverance is really built into this. It really wants us to have a discovery within the cyclical nature of the emotional experiences and connections that we have in life. Now, the moon being full is in its opposite location to the sun over in Aquarius in gate 30. Gate 30 is in the solar plexus. It's called the gate of desire. It's part of our abstract process as well. It's that emotional desire to have a change, to have something new. It's also very closely connected to the fates. Some of these new cycles of emotional experience that we go on do seem to be fated. There's this idea that we're meeting karma, sharing karma. There's something there, but it really speaks to the underlying current of our lives that we are here to say yes, gate 29, to new cycles of experience and discovery. And this gate 30 is where the moon herself is. So she's bringing this lunar emotional quality to, oh, wouldn't it be nice to honor this desire and have this experience? So bringing a very strong emotional quality, not only the super blue moon I mentioned, but also the fact that she's in the solar plexus. And making this opposition to the sun. So we can also say that if the new moon was in Leo, which is how do we shine out into the world with our greatest sense of inspiration and creativity, now that it's at the full moon stage and the culmination of the illumination, the moon has been growing in her appearance and her beauty and her illumination for 2 weeks, and now she's at her zenith here, is that how does that fit into the Aquarian nature of the full moon? How do we share this individual personal fire of creativity to the world? with knowing that Aquarius is the water bearer, the bringer of truth and light to everyone equally. It's a very socially oriented zodiac sign where everyone gets to have their own truth. Everyone is a nine-centered being with their own personal sovereignty and respects everyone else's truth and sovereignty. And so how we bring that Leo energy of the new moon into the social setting of how do we share that out with our personal truth and creativity. Now, the sign of Aquarius is ruled by the planet Uranus. So we always want to look at where would Uranus be in this chart? Well, he's down there, as I mentioned, in Taurus in gate 8, the gate of contribution. It's part of our individual circuit group in the channel of inspiration. And so Uranus happens to be at an exact, when I say exact, I mean partile, which means in the same degree, squaring the sun at 27 degrees Leo and the moon at 27 degrees Aquarius. So the ruler of this super blue moon, Uranus, is forming a very strong T-square with the full moon itself. This is bringing such an incredible electric energy to this super blue moon. Uranus is the planet of innovation, unusualness, revolution, change. It just brings something so sudden and out of the blue. We just can never predict Uranus. It's like trying to predict where lightning is going to strike. But what we can do, and I would say particularly with Uranus in this very powerful position at the time of this new moon, it's kind of like when you're out hiking in a storm. You may sense lightning is coming. You might get a little rumble in the background. We don't know where the lightning is going to strike, but it's going to happen somewhere. So there is just this air of it. You can feel the electricity in the air. And so things could come out of the blue. Things may be appearing to go in one direction, and then instantaneously something is going in the other direction. So because of this very powerful Uranian energy at the time of this full moon, it's just so powerful, trying to give you words that can give you that sensation of it. I think one thing that's very supportive this week is to be very flexible, very adaptable, non-judgmental, holding on to things. See, this is all happening in fixed signs. Both Leo, Aquarius, and Taurus are 3 fixed signs. So to have Uranus, which doesn't like to be fixed at all, it is you cannot chain Uranus down. It's talking about bringing deep, instantaneous, sudden change to structures that have been holding on. And so that's why it's really supportive to look at our personal lives with an air of acceptance. Pluto in gate 60, and I'm thinking Neptune in gate 25, to be really deeply connected to our higher self spirit, particularly the G center itself, about where we are in this life, and realizing that there's some things, some areas of our life that may need to be examined, changed, or things may need to be let go, and to be accepting of that, because Uranus could bring changes to particular areas, whatever they may be, but being aware of that, being, accepting that, when something happens, I follow authority, but if I need to let it go, then let it go. This is not a time to be clinging on. It's a time to be malleable, adaptive, flowing with the rhythm of life, accepting what comes our way, knowing that all of these transits, whatever outer experiences we're having in our life right now, they are all opportunities to go inward. And again, I'm speaking to the outer planets, inward to the gate 60. What limitations are we still working through? Inward to the gate 25. How is my higher self spirit working with that to grow and develop in this particular incarnation? And with Uranus bringing that shocking change is in gate 8, the gate of contribution. So going inward to really continue your personal journey into your self-creativity. How is that working? What's going on with that? Are there changes? You may feel changes from this Uranian energy at the full moon. but to flow with that, to go with that, not to resist. Right now, to be like an ostrich and put our head in the sand, or to really dig in our heels right now, it doesn't really feel the supportive way. We are asked to experience change right now, and our attitude can really support us as we notice what's going on in our external world, and recognizing that that is an opportunity to check in with my inner world, to be mindful of not getting into the blame game or the projection that it's the other people's problem or fault. No, everything that's going on right now is as it relates to me and what's going on inside here. So really supportive, I think, with that type of attitude of flexibility and adaptability. But that T square, very, very powerful between the full moon, the sun, and Uranus. Now, in addition to that T square, there's another second T square that's also very tight in terms of the aspect, and I want to talk about that one as well. Now I'm talking about the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini. Both of those planets are currently in gate 45. Now, we had the exact conjunction already took place a few days ago in gate 35, line 6. Mars is now a couple of degrees past Jupiter at the moment of the full moon, but they're still very close. They're only about 2 degrees apart. So just as a standalone aspect, Mars conjunct Jupiter in Gemini, this is incredibly powerful energy as well. I mean, we know the energy of Mars, the god of war, the impetuous drive to push boundaries forward in our world. Jupiter, the planet of expansion and growth and opportunity, all in the sign of Gemini, which is about communication and our intellect and doing lots of different things and short traveling trips and so forth. Just a lot of activity going on right here. So again, this energy by itself can really distract us. It's really easy to get caught up with invitations and plans to do so many things, but be mindful not to get too scattered right now, because with this kind of weather system going on, boy, we really want to have our bare feet planted in the grass or the dirt, really connected with the Gaia, Mother Earth, and nature as well, to find that peace and tranquility amidst all the noise that's going on right now. Well, that Mars Jupiter that I've just been describing is in a T square with Venus in Virgo in gate 47, and with Saturn in Pisces still in gate 22 and retrograde. So Venus and Saturn are in an opposition. So Saturn, being the planet of limitation and obstacles and constriction, going retro is in retrograde in gate 22, which is I've been talking about for a few reports. This is where Saturn is offering all of us the ability to re-examine and possibly restructure how we share our individual emotional feelings in group settings. And so that's a really important ongoing movement with Saturn in gate 22, that we all are being offered this opportunity to examine what triggers us. How do we have these emotional outbursts? Where are they coming from? A lot of support from Saturn right now to examine that. And that opposition to Venus, Venus being the planet of love, harmony, and beauty, all the wants that we have in our lives, can be feeling this restriction. However, Venus is in gate 47, which is the gate of, it's a potential awareness gate in the Ajna Center. Trying to understand and realize what does this experience mean. So in Venus and Virgo, there's this Virgoan ability to look at the details, to try to sift through the mental maya of all that's going on and discover something. There's a potential opportunity to realize something about this experience, but it can also feel a bit of a limitation on relationships. Now, relationships, you're going to hear me talk more about this as we move through the week. Venus and relationships are very much part of the mix this week. And then the final tip of that triangle being the Jupiter-Mars conjunction in gate 45. But 2 T squares at the time of this super blue full moon. folks, this is some intense energy. It really is. There's no getting around describing it, but I do see tremendous opportunity for discovery here. Now, I'm also saying that because Mercury's been in retrograde and is still in retrograde at the time of the full moon at 26 degrees Leo in the gate 29 with the sun. And at the time of this full moon, there's actually a septile, which is the purple line on the chart, from Pluto to Mercury and the sun. So they're both in gate 29. So I would say this septile certainly draws in both of them to Pluto. So let me just mention this aspect. I don't talk about these a lot unless they're pretty much exact and if they're happening at an important time. And this is an important time because we're looking at the full moon chart. And it's very tight, the aspect. Well, the septile in astrology, the one word keynote is mystical. It's just one of those things where there seems to be almost like a download from the universe, or it's like a portal opens briefly. It's a very fast moving transit, but it's there. And so it's like, when I think about Mercury retrograde with all of this other energy going on, it's a lot of dynamic square energy to do something, move forward. There's just a lot of activity, but that Mercury retrograde is saying, not so fast. We're in retrograde. We really want to be retracing our steps here, keeping our eyes on the ground, looking for the it's like tracking an animal. There's something to discover with Mercury retrograde through our thinking and our analyzing and reviewing. And this septile to Pluto in the gate of limitation, and Pluto being the planet of truth, ultimate truth, that there may be something here. And so I think that as dynamic as it is, as conflictive as the energy is, as emotionally turbulent as it is, it's also very potent, rich soil for individual discovery. That gate 29, part of the channel of discovery. There's really valuable gems that we can mine deep at our psychological depths. I'm still talking about this gate 29 with the sun, Mercury, and the Pluto in gate 60. There is definitely something that can be uncovered here if we have the discipline and the awareness to be aware, right? To really stay regulated and observe. So much news, so much activity, so much dynamic energy, to be strong in that stability, really taking the mercurial support to look at the details here, to be willing to change things if that's what your authority is telling you to do. That Uranian element of change is in the air, so that flexibility and adaptability can be super supportive right now. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and move on through the week here. But wow, what a amazing full moon it is. And I think, again, it's got a lot of potential for discovery as we now will go over the next 2 weeks, and the moon will start her journey home through the waning phase back to a new moon again. And so as we go past this full moon for the next 2 weeks, we can be thinking about that. We're returning home emotionally. It's going to be a 2 weeks for integrating, for reorganizing, restructuring, and really elevating our consciousness. When there's something to be discovered from this full moon, and these next 2 weeks will be, how do we implement that? How do we integrate that and stabilize it in a regulated way inside of our body? Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll move into Tuesday. And again, all of those aspects I talked about, they're part of every day. This is not a one-day event. It's an ongoing process, part of a bigger process, but certainly as we go through this week, all of that information I was sharing is part of the background here. The one thing I'll mention about Tuesday is that right after the full moon, just a couple hours later, the moon will move into Pisces, where she will be for 2.5 days. And so when we look at the noontime chart on Tuesday, she's moving through Pisces. In a water emotional sign, the moon will travel through all of the gates of the solar plexus while she goes through Pisces, everything except gate 6 over in Virgo. But gate 6 is the polarity to gate 36 in Pisces, so that gate 6 gets drawn in. So just reminding us that as the moon goes through, coming off this wild full moon is now going to go through all the gates of the solar plexus in that sense. And so she's bringing her what she's learned, what our emotional dysregulation or regulation is. It's going through this processing, right? That's what our solar plexus does. It processes our feelings in aims of reaching emotional clarity, but it is going to have a very emotional quality to the Monday evening, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe. And she's also going to form a conjunction with Saturn in gate 22 on the afternoon of Tuesday. So I think for Tuesday, the message is that, let's just stay in tune with our feelings. Again, careful to not use the projection or the blame or personal shame, just to be present to them. What are they telling me? If we can name them, if we can look at them and hold them, we can work with them rather than being unconscious of our feelings and reacting to the nature of them. That's where we can get out of alignment. We get farther away from our personal authority. We can get down rabbit holes of altercations and emotional conflicts that maybe weren't necessary. But it is an emotional time to recognize, accept, and appreciate them, and see what if they may be telling us something very important. And I think they are. I think there's so much symbolism here that if we can stay connected to authority, grounded in our sense of stability and regulation, tremendous discovery possible over this coming time period. So we'll go into Wednesday, August 21st. Uh, Now, one thing I didn't mention on Tuesday that was happening, but I'll highlight it here, but it would have started on Tuesday. Again, all of these transits, they have different time periods, but they're never just that one day generally, unless it's the moon. But as we get into Wednesday, I want to point out Mars, which is now moved into 21 degrees Gemini, is forming a square with Venus at 20 degrees Virgo. Now, this square, because Venus and Mars are both moving forward, is going to be in play for the rest of this week's transit report. So definitely, even though we're on Wednesday, it's part of the rest of the week as well. And so let's look at that. Now, if we look at this individually, we all have a yin and a yang frequency within inside of us. We all have male and feminine frequency coming from both Mars and Venus. And so it's supportive for all of us to have a balance between our yang and our yin. The yang of going out and moving ourselves into the world, but the yin receptivity and appreciation and surrender to life itself. And so there's definitely this quality of that's in the mix as well, finding our place. Again, maybe a little easy to balance these within ourselves due to the emotional heightened sense of the frequency, but it is something to think about, to contemplate, right? Where we may need to bring a little more yang into our life and be a little more assertive using that energy from the Leo new moon we had a couple of weeks ago. Maybe we need a little more confidence in our life, or maybe we've been overly proud, overly arrogant, overly dictatorship, and now we need to bring some yin into our lives. Maybe some deeper breaths, be a little more receptive. And so finding that balance is very important. Now, that's all on an individual level, but if we look at this at a relationship level, and I mean any kind of relationship, certainly romantic, but also could be friends, family, coworkers, that type of, your network. When they're square here, we may find some frictional dynamics in our relationships. It's definitely part of this background frequency here where Mars and Venus are having a difficult conversation. Now, the upside of that is that it takes friction to have growth, just like gate 6 tells us. We're going to have gate 6 in a minute, so I'll say more about that. But just to say that at a square here, if we're experiencing friction in our relationships right now, remember what I've been talking about already. It's not the time to point the finger, to blame it on the other and say that they've ruined our life or anything like that. No, it's an opportunity to look inward and say, okay, what is my role here? What is this other relationship with this person? What are they teaching me? What can I learn about myself? Taking personal responsibility right now has profound opportunity for us. We really can get down into some of those core wounds right now and wipe away any residue that's still there. I mean, this entire year is about personal truth, purpose, passion, and inspiration as our whole rave year is about that. And this point in the year is saying, okay, let's do that hard work. Let's really dig in there. And I think it's really emphasized in the chart this week, especially with this full moon. So yeah, that T-square, tremendous Mars Jupiter energy, squaring the Venus Saturn. Yeah, understanding that we may be bumping it up against the guardrails right now, right? And to not, and so again, I just think it's about finding that equanimity, emotional equanimity. If we're hitting the accelerator too hard, we can blast right through the guardrail and go off the cliff. But if we're also not putting any energy into it, we're not getting anywhere. So it is a complicated energy that's going on there. But again, when these things happen, when we see these frictional elements in the weather, we know that they're very supportive for advancement, for growth in that sense. And I think back to the gate 33 at the new moon. The gate 33 is about advancement through retreat. Right? It's taking a weak position and waiting for the opportunity to find a strong position. And we're seeing that emphasized here as we move through the week, even on Wednesday, to recognizing the balance between that. And again, it's all about following authority, which can sort this out. But yeah, we're definitely probably going to see it where we're getting stimulated or triggered at a deep level. Even simple conversations could take a sharp turn, and all of a sudden it's bringing stuff up and we go to dysregulation in a second. So I think, again, having your toolbox, having the things in your home or in your work where you can just have a little touchstone, that when you start to feel a little elevated, to go touch that touchstone, take yourself inward here, take those deep breaths as well. So yes, the Mars Venus square definitely going to be part of the flavor for the rest of the week. As I mentioned, that moon on Tuesday, here again, still on Wednesday, traveling through Pisces, so very emotional, and going to be making a conjunction with that Neptune in gate 25. So that, again, by following our emotions, just being witness to them, appreciating them, allowing them to come out in a safe environment for ourselves and others, we can really touch on this gate 25, this spirit of the higher self. It is sort of going through the ring of fire right now with this incredible full moon on Monday. So yeah, there's things to discover there as well about how we sense the spirit of our higher self, and how does that tie into overcoming the limitation in our healing process, and ultimately getting to share what is truly unique about ourselves that we want to contribute to the larger conversation in the world. And then I also want to point out another very important aspect of the week that's coming into play on Wednesday is that Mercury in retrograde there in Leo currently has moved into gate 4 as of Wednesday, the gate of formalization. It's in the channel of logic. And so we're getting this Mercury in the Ajna center, very comfortable there. Mercury is very associated with our Ajna, how we think, how we analyze intellectually. And so we have a strong mercurial support in this idea of discovering a pattern of logic. Now, that can be very helpful in these emotional, turbulent times. And that Mercury's forming a trine with Chiron at 23 degrees Aries. Well, Chiron is in gate 42, the gate of growth. It's in the channel of maturation, a design of balanced development, which is the format channel for all of this abstract circuitry that's been so heavily activated. So this trine between Mercury and Chiron, what a wonderful aspect to add into this emotionally dynamic week, because this trine is saying we can really start to understand something here. Now, in gate 42, this gate of growth, how are we growing through our cycles of development? Are we gaining emotional maturity? That Saturn in gate 22 retrograde is really doing this structural revisional work. And here we have Chiron in gate 42 urging us on to heal from our past wounds, to have forgiveness for those that caused them, to have forgiveness for ourselves, and to find a sense of healing here. So that Mercury trine Chiron, there's something, again, to be found here. It's part of this theme of discovery I'm sharing this week, that there's really something, if we don't get caught up in the external noise out there and just be the witness, and be aware of our internal regulation following personal authority. This Mercury retrograde trine Chiron, which it's going to do a couple times. This is, it's still got to go backwards a little further, and then it's going to go forward. So we're going to get this trine again in the coming week. So real fertile ground to make another leap in this idea of healing from our wounds, so that we don't have that triggering, or if it happens, it's not as intense. There's super healing quality to this incredibly frictionally, emotionally challenging week. Real discoveries could be made, I think, for sure, with that Mercury trine the Chiron. And let's go ahead and move into Thursday. And we can see that Mercury at 23 degrees is exact in that trine in its retrograde movement. And again, it'll go back and then move forward again. So we're going to get this again the coming days. Also on Thursday, the sun has just moved into Virgo. So we're in Virgo season as of Thursday. And as the sun made that movement, on Wednesday, it was at 29 degrees Leo, forming a quincunx to Neptune. And now that it moves on Thursday to 0 degrees Virgo, that sun is forming just hours later a quincunx to Pluto. And so again, that's why I wanted to mention those outer planets at the onset, that they're really being drawn in here. It's kind of hard. It's a little fuzzy with the quincunx, but it's powerful, and it's something there. And I think it's part of that personal emotional journey of self-reflection and contemplation, because in a quincunx, it's not readily apparent. It's not so clear, but something is at work there. And so that's where that closing the eyes, whether it's meditating, yoga, whatever your somatic toolbox items are, using those right now, delving into your personal creativity, there are deep psychological elements from the Pluto, Neptune, Uranus outer planets that can be accessible right now. And I think those two quincunxes between Sun, Neptune, Sun, Pluto could be really supportive for that. The moon has moved into Aries at this point, so she made her 2.5 days journey through Pisces. Very emotional start to the week with that incredibly Uranian electric full moon. Now in Aries, the moon gets a little more confident here. And so again, just to be mindful that people could be hasty. Moon in Aries is so fast. It doesn't think about things. Aries moon just goes, and it can be very valorous in that movement, but it does have that tendency to jump a little quick. And I think what I'm personally emphasizing for myself this week is to be mindful. Moving too quick right now could get ourselves. There's just too much noise. It's hard to be clear. So I think steady as she goes, and all the other things that I've mentioned there. But yeah, moon will travel through Aries for a couple of days there on Thursday. And we can see while she's doing that in the body graph on the noontime chart, moving through gate 21. And with Mars and Jupiter in gate 45, we're getting the channel of the money line for about a third of the day here through the middle part of the day. And so it's a fast moving transit. It's going to have more implications if it's activating something in your natal chart, but it definitely is bringing the moon and Aries quality to, I want to take control of this or that and make something happen. But boy, really encouraging following personal authority, because with all of this dynamic energy, it's easy to take missteps. We know from moving too fast, having too much Jupiterian Mars energy, we can get out in front of ourselves, and not always helpful to be there, but we want to stay centered and grounded within ourselves. Okay, let's go ahead and move into Friday. I can see the moon there just wrapping up her time in Aries. She would have just made that conjunction to Chiron in the morning on Friday. So, and that Mercury still same degree trine to Chiron. So here, what we're seeing on Thursday, Friday, based on hopefully a feeling of inner strength and connection with oneself throughout this powerful week. Thursday and Friday, that moon conjunct Chiron, again, there can be a real download here, a real sense of maybe I finally have let that triggering aspect go. And if we haven't, that's okay. We're definitely going to get a series of opportunities in regards to what may trigger us or throw us out of whack. But man, are we getting some really good support here? Mercury trine Chiron and the moon conjunct. After the moon's come off that full moon, gone all the way through the solar plexus and Pisces, now joining up with that Chiron, really powerful opportunity for growth and development in whatever area may be stimulated that you're thinking about right now. And additionally, on Friday, the sun has moved into gate 59. Now, this would have happened on the evening of Thursday because you didn't see a chart with 59 line 1. By the time we got to noontime on Friday, which is when I run the charts for, it's already in line 2. But with the sun having moved into gate 59 and Venus moving into gate 6, we're getting the channel of mating, a design focused on reproduction, also nicknamed the channel of intimacy. Now, I had already brought up relationships due to the Mars-Venus square still ongoing. In fact, even on Friday's chart, it's still in the same degree of the square, 22 degrees Virgo, 22 degrees Gemini. Now we're also seeing it in the body graph with the sun in 59 and Venus in gate 6. Now, the sun in gate 59, it's in the sacral center. It is called the gate of dispersion, splitting apart. It's the ability to break down barriers to achieve union in the channel of intimacy. Well, with Venus in gate 6, the gate of friction. It's also called the gate of conflict, but we know that everything in the beginning, right back to when we have conception and the creation of life on Earth, there is friction. There is the sperm cell penetrating the egg. And so all of creative growth and development requires this friction, and gate 6 speaks to that. The fundamental design component of progress is the law that growth does not exist without friction. Well, again, I think we're seeing this in our relationships towards the end of this week, if not already, that it can look a little chaotic. We can feel a bit of overwhelm, particularly if we're talking about family of origin relationships could be very much in play, trying to finally overcome and let go of these dynamics that have been holding us back, possibly for much of our life. Or it could be, and again, more of our network of relationships. But somewhere, this is indicating that in our intimate relationships, there is stimulating opportunity to discover truth and inspiration and growth and healing. So very powerful emphasis on our relationships and our internal relationship, our own internal personal relationship to yin and yang. So a lot of encouragement to find our inner balance right now. It's a turbulent weather system, but when we go inward, that's the safe space. That's our home zone. So cultivating our garden of the soul right now, making sure that you have a lot of nourishing, plenty of sleep and water and healthy food. All of these things really can contribute to our voltage. As my partner Brandy likes to always say, we have opportunity to increase our voltage right now if we're relying on our personal authority and not getting lost in the noise externally, not searching for something external out there, a truth out there that I can bring in here. No, the answers are already in here. And so we're cracking the Plutonic code to decipher that and move past these limitations that have held us back. So really, I'm very optimistic. Even when I see so much turbulence and dynamic energy, I know that that's where the juice is for growth and development. So being strong in personal authority can eliminate the insecurity and the anxiety of turbulence, right? We know those are qualities of individual circuitry. Once we recognize that and are aware of that, it can be simply a reminder, I'm feeling insecure. I don't need to lash out or run out. I want to come home to my authority and work it out there. Speaking of individual, if we take a look at the body graph, the moon herself on Friday has entered gate 3 with Pluto in gate 60. So we're getting the moon and Pluto activating the channel of mutation. This is the format energy for all of this individual circuitry. So this is really, again, bringing another layer of depth to the forces that are work this week. We have the ability to fundamentally mutate into personal truth and creativity, and do that not only personally, but we're getting the opportunity to do that inside of our relationships. Now that's a big ask right there. I mean, it's hard enough often I find dealing with myself, but now when we're dealing with the other in an intimate relationship, we really amplifying the challenge here. But what awesome challenge it is to find personal truth and integrity within myself, and to find truth and integrity in a relationship. Profound implications on one's life to take on that invitation. And it's here right now. The channel of mutation and the channel of mating coming off a incredibly rare super blue full moon. The Mercury trining Chiron urging us, yes, discover what this new truth may mean for your life. Discover the freedom you can find through making that forgiveness to another who's hurt you for so long. The liberation possible in that is inexplicable. And literally this week is carrying that frequency. So there is real mutative power possible. And I think the moon, even though she's fast and that channel is just there for that day, it's really tied to the overall message that I've been sharing this week. And so, again, very, very optimistic in what may come from this period of time if we can stay centered and regulated within our authority. Real opportunity is in the offering. Okay, let's go into Saturday. Now, on Saturday, Mars is going to move into gate 12. And with Saturn and gate 22, we're also going to get another individual channel, the channel of openness, the design of a social being or not. But for archetypally, this speaks. I was already speaking about Saturn retrograde in 22, revisiting the restructuring of our emotional energy to be expressed with others. Now we're getting Mars in that gate 12. Now, Mars does always bring that edge to it, a bit of aggressiveness, immaturity. It can be a little in front of himself. But if we're balancing that Venus-Mars square that's been still going on here, it's still less than a degree apart. That square is there. If we're balancing our feminine and masculine energy here, Venus can help regulate that Mars energy in gate 12 right now. And when it's balanced, when Mars can be valorous and not arrogant or overbearing in the gate 12, it can really help bring to fruition what Saturn is doing in gate 22. And what I'm thinking about is how we're working with these things that trigger us emotionally, that bring us these fast, elevated senses of anger or fear or anxiety, whatever that is. Here we have this opportunity to see how that plays out, right? How this transit has our voice changed? Have we noticed one of those moments come across us into our experience, but yet we're feeling the growth by now? Hopefully, we're realizing even if we get triggered, we recognize it faster. That means we're getting closer. That means we don't cause external damage because we're recognizing possibly in the moment what a triggering experience is, and we're able to go to our regulation and to discover where is it coming from, that person in our family that we may still be dealing with, or a sibling or whatever. Boy, again, real opportunity in the channel of mating and the channel of openness here to work through this emotional process of maturing. This is really at the heart of everything that I'm sharing right now, is real. It's the maturation of our personal emotional energy and how we can share that more effectively with others so people understand us better. They can be our allies now, that no one's out here trying to hold us back, and recognizing that really just brings us to a new level. And it really supports this inspiration and creativity, which is at the heart of our whole journey this year. That Mars in the gate 12 is sextile to the Mercury trine Chiron that I mentioned. If you look at the astrological wheel from Mars, you'll see a sextile to Chiron and a sextile to Mercury. So again, I hope I'm sharing this, illustrating this story well enough for us to all to continue along here. What powerful energy to heal ourselves and the relationships that we're in, whatever that means. And again, whether you stay in a relationship or leave the relationship, that's all based on your personal authority. But we can find personal healing, whatever that outcome is, right? Recognizing that it was all an opportunity for my own growth and development. And we may get to hear with Mars in that gate 12 what does that Saturnian new structure look like from gate 22? So all part of this emotional cycle of development, and it's a very supportive sextiles that we're seeing Mars to Chiron, Mercury in that trine. It's kind of like a mini grand trine with those two sextiles in that trine. Okay, let's go ahead and get to Sunday, and we'll wrap this up. Now, the thing I want to point out on Sunday is that Mercury at 22 degrees Leo and still in that gate 4 of formalization, a potential awareness of finding logic in this emotional pattern, is forming a half square to the south node and a square and a half to the north node. And so that's, again, why I really feel so much discovery is possible in the process this week. That Mercury in this dynamic energy to the nodal axis, right? It's saying that something can be discovered through our mercurial efforts right now. Taking that time to stop, to not jump too quick, to not getting sucked into something that wasn't really for us. When we're present and aware and grounded in that moment, Mercury can show us something here that's going to serve us very well as we move into the future. So I think that Mercury aligning in a frictional energy with the nodal axis is part of the discovery possible. Mars is still in that sextile to Chiron. Again, all of these aspects are kind of all mixed together this week, just trying to make it a little more clear in my descriptions. And then I just finally want to close on the fact that on Sunday, the moon is going to conjunct Uranus, right? So we were at the full moon on Monday, we had the T square with the full moon and Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius. So just how emphasized Uranus is for this lunar cycle. Well, here we're having the moon in her waning phase, heading back to the next new moon, aligning with Uranus. And so again, there's some deep emotional connection to whatever took place over this week, whatever's going on in that gate 8, whatever you are relating to in terms of your own inspirational contribution to the world right now. It's an excellent day on Sunday to do some deep dive on that, right? Maybe if you have the time to do your contemplation or some journaling. But I think on Sunday, as that moon is passing through Uranus, there's something as well to be discovered here. So I think I'm going to close this report on that. I wish you all a lovely full moon, powerful, dynamic week, but to remember that it is about the process of discovery. We have to be present and aware to make these discoveries. Very easy right now during this period of time to be distracted, to be overwhelmed with outer influence, and that will not help our process right now. Tremendous support for discovery when we're grounded in the foundation of our personal truth. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being here. That is all for now.